On today's episode, Tim pretends to be Joe, SpaceX gets ready to land despite some baby seals, and some major Tesla upgrades were just leaked. Let's get ludicrous. Welcome to Our Ludicrous Future. This is the show where we discuss all of the future things that make our present life gooder and things. I'm Tim Dodd, the everyday astronaut, and with me is Ben Solons.
What's up, guys? It's Ben Solons from Teslanomics, and we are Joe-less today.
Joe-less. Sorry for the terrible Joe impression. I just felt like...
Sins Joe.
Yeah, no Joe. He's on vacation. Well, maybe. He's been traveling for a few days or something. Kind of had the plane turn around at some point even. Is that right?
Yeah. I think he farted maybe, and they were like, "Ooh, we got to go back.
That's it.
That's it. We
Everyone
cannot
off the
continue." Did you see
some parachutes?
Did you see the one where the guy lit a cigarette on the plane?
No. Recently?
Yeah. And it was weird because the guy just seemed to be... It didn't seem that negligent. It just seemed like he was so exhausted and tired from something that he was just kind of slumped over and he just had a cigarette. He was just like, and then fell back asleep, and everyone's like, "Dude, what are you doing?"
I thought you can't even bring lighters on planes, can you?
I mean,
how did he
search
do
you?
Well, the metal detectors and everything, and the
could be,
and the thing. That's crazy. Yeah. Well,
maybe that was a sign. Yeah.
Hopefully that wasn't the case. Yeah. So, but Joe, we hope you're enjoying vacation. We miss you. And yeah, I can't. He needs a break. He puts out 2 videos a day. 2 videos a week, I mean. Can you imagine? That's too much. That's factually, there's no way I could do that. There's physically no way I could do that.
I tried to do a couple videos a week, but it was just so much work, because trying to balance the quality of your production with the depth of the production, right? Like a daily vlogger, you just run around and just record your day and then chop it all up together. It's a lot of work, but it's it's a lot of work because it's just the pace of it.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to do something more produced, more in depth, then you got to research. You have to have a shot list. You have to have B-roll. You have to have there's so many pieces to it, and he does a pretty good, an incredible job. So it's one of those things. So yeah,
dude,
hope you're enjoying your time there, Joe.
Yeah, on that front, just for instance, I got stuck trying to write one sentence. I got stuck on 3 at least 1 hour rabbit holes each trying to finish that sentence. It was literally the space shuttle rolls to align its azimuth via gimbals or something, and every time I hit a word, I'm like, is that actually correct? And then I had to research, and then oh my gosh.
See, I just go for it, and I have this great group of folks that help me let me know anytime I misspeak on my videos. So
they're called
it's really...
the YouTube comments.
It's a great relationship we have.
Oh man, that is true. Well, I feel why don't you take it away first with?
Okay.
You have some probably the biggest news, a pretty significant leak. Coming out about, because we talked about the S and X last week about how, or 2 weeks within the past 2 weeks about kind of the refresh coming up. I think it was just last week we talked about it where the that refresh has been rumored, and all of a sudden we had some significant updates, right?
That's correct. So coming from my friend Kim, who has a channel called Like Tesla that maybe you guys have seen, maybe not. She posted a video where she was explaining some information they received about the new upgrade to the new Tesla Model S and X. This has been a long time coming. I feel like it's been a long time now. We've heard about the refresh. And then, not too long ago, there was an update. It wasn't actually a refresh, but they swapped out one of the motors or something for, I think it was just they replaced the front motor in the Model S and X to improve the range, which now put the Model S at 370 miles. Apparently, this new refresh will be sort of a design refresh, and there have been multiple leaks from Electrek and other places as well. And it'll have over 400 miles of range. The Model S will, and the Model 3 will be getting close to that. And the Model S will have 3 actual motors and a lighter battery pack. So, big update to the Model S, and supposedly this is all coming in September just in time for the holiday shopping. You want to buy that $100,000 car you've been holding off on, you know. But yeah, some pretty crazy stuff. So Kim's video is there. They talked about all that. I think this will be a huge thing, man. I mean, you know, I'm curious what the demand has been like for the S and the X. The sales clearly have been down for the past couple quarters. So this could be, you know, something that's been in the works for a while and is really just a major step forward in electrification of the fleet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, I hope that 400 miles is just enough to just shut people up.
About range anxiety?
About range anxiety. Because, like, again, we talk about this all the time, but, you know, in your daily driving, and we were just talking about this earlier, about the video idea you had before we started the show, is like, if you're driving, even if you have a 200-mile range, if you're using that day to day, using 200 miles in your daily driving, you should move. Yeah. Unless, of course, you're like you're on the road for sales or something like that, then that's part of the job, and you probably
real
do
estate,
need a car that's
something like that. Yeah.
Where you would need a car that's probably based on that. But for most of us, you know, your commute, a 40-mile commute would be a lot. So an 80-mile range, I mean, you know, add a little bit of grace period there, make it a 150-mile range would be plenty for most people.
I mean, I drove a Model S with 200 miles of range for a few years, or a couple of years, although my commute was much shorter. You know, it was like 15 miles round trip. So, you know, and yeah, 200 miles was fine. Even went on road trips with the supercharger network. That did get to be kind of a pain because with 200 miles top range and you hit hills, not hills, but like mountain ranges and things, that just zaps all of that out. Mm-hmm. And you don't get it all back on the way down. You know, you do get some, but anyways, yeah. So yeah, I mean, hopefully this will do that. I think that if you combine the 400-mile range with the V3 supercharging, which it reports these will be able to do, it would have to be able to do that. It'd be stupid to have a major refresh to this and not be able to charge as fast as the Model 3. So if they do all that, you can go 400 miles, roughly, we'll call it, and say you can recharge the majority of that in 15 minutes. I think that truly ends it. Like beyond that, fly. If you're traveling that far in a day, 700-800 miles, fly. You know, unless you're Tim, you know, on a road trip being crazy. But most people, like if you like someone I knew was like, oh, what if I need to drive to Colorado? I'm like, dude, it's a long ways. Mm-hmm. Like, do you do that? Like, really, man? I mean, I guess, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. But if that's like a common thing that you need, yeah, there's so many other options. So I think like there's the concept of parity with gas cars, and I did a video on that, but there's also the concept of just like reasonableness, right? Like above what level is it like stupid to have a car that goes 700 miles on a charge? Right. Like I think that'd be cool, but it's like completely unnecessary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is getting into that. What's 400 mile, like if we're looking at 400 mile range as the new norm, like what's the point almost? Is that do you think this is necessary? I mean, they're talking about better performance, you know, maybe a lighter battery pack to help efficiency.
I like 400 miles. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Really, I think so. So there's two scenarios here. There's road trips, which we talked about a little bit. You know, superchargers are great, and they're relatively quick, but they're not nearly as quick as a gas car. So if you can get up to 400 miles, it means you can charge fewer times, which overall means, yeah, you know, it's pretty much on par, or at least you're going to stop for that amount of time anyways, one way or the other. So I think that's good. I think you could probably go up to like 600 miles. Above 600 miles on a single charge would be like, all right, this is kind of excessive. Yes, I'll buy it, but it's excessive, right?
Right.
And then there's the other side is when you don't have a home charging setup and you have to charge at a public place. And as electric vehicles become more and more common, this scenario, you know, becomes more prevalent. So if you have to go charge each week at a supercharger, well, yeah, that sucks because you'll sit there for an hour or more. You maybe have to even wait to get in, things like that. Mm-hmm. It can be you know, substantially more of a pain in the butt than a gas car in that case. And so then the other case would be if you had 600 miles, hey, it's once every other week. That's less of a pain in the butt, you know. So I think that there's a case for longer range, but there probably is a point where you're like, this is just dumb. Like, yeah, like we don't need more than this. So.
Right. Well,
and we're getting closer and closer, so it's awesome.
I think the real key is honestly, like, if you have a 400-mile range and you can get 200 miles in 15 minutes out of it, you know, on a V3 supercharger, or even 200 miles in 10 minutes, now we're talking. That is substantial. So I'm really excited to see what those numbers coming in, and better performance. That's kind of hard to, I guess, if you take 350 pounds off a car.
I mean, well, yeah, I'm very curious about that, you know, because I'm not sure what that means specifically, but if you think of 0 to 60 times, the Model S is the, you know, a tenth of a second behind the Porsche 918 Spyder. So if it beats that, that's great. It won't beat the Roadster for sure, but really, Jason Fensky over at Engineering Explained has a great video talking about this, that that tires actually become your limiting factor.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have to do with horsepower or torque or any of that stuff. It's really about, like, you can just assume you have infinite. Like, if you're doing the calculation, you can just draw infinity for the amount of horsepower because it's irrelevant above a certain point. So you can make the car lighter, but that may make the traction worse. So there's, you know, there's kind of a trade-off here. I'm curious to see what it looks like. So
yeah, there's that weird trade-off. I think I watched that whole thing, and there's a weird trade-off where when it gets lighter, there is physically less. It makes it faster still, though. There's less pressure on the physical contact patch of the tire, but there's now less mass to move, so it can move easier.
Right. I don't know. Yeah, it'll be a thing like. So I know you talk about this a lot, the physics approach. To me, this is the data approach. It's not trying to understand, like, how these pieces work. It's like, I don't know. It's going to be fast. Let's just take it to the track. Yeah. Just, you know, blast that thing a bunch of times and see what the data says.
Well, the P100D already, they aren't advertising it as any faster, the new Ludacris mode P100D. But did you see that My Tesla Adventure, or Eli on Twitter, I can't think of his full Twitter thing, but he got a new P100D.
Is he the Spaceman? Starman?
Yep, Starman. Yeah. He took a P100D to the track and broke records. It's a
cool
margin, like it is recent, like decently faster than the old P100D Ludacris. So
now the track is a different animal as well.
Right.
So with a track, Tesla Model S traditionally has actually performed very poorly. And the reason is because it doesn't handle well, and in fact, I think the earlier ones they were taking to the track were overheating.
Well, sorry, not like a drag strip, I should say, is a track.
Oh, okay, yeah, different thing. Yeah, drag strip.
Still
and
a track in my world, at least. We call that a track.
Yeah, so a track is a track. A track is like
a racetrack.
A racetrack, yeah, where you're going in laps and things like that. That's where the Model 3 really shines.
Yeah.
So,
no, he took it to a drag strip, and it was noticeably faster.
Did he do a 0 to 60 test?
I think they just had the 60-foot test. 60 foot.
I just bought this little device, the Draggy, because I want to do 0 to 60 tests in my car. So that would be really cool if he could pull a faster than 2.4. If he could pull a 2.3 0 to 60 or anybody, then
I thought I saw it. It said 2.3 was what he was doing with that thing.
Then that ties the Porsche 918 Spyder.
Now can you imagine getting faster than that?
Yeah, you can get so the theoretical boundary was 2 seconds.
Wow.
According to from the physics explanation. Right. The boundary was 2 seconds, and that was because of the tires. So basically, the tires, the commercially available tires at the time, did not have enough traction to make you go quicker than 0 to 60 in 2 seconds.
Right.
So that's where the Jason did that video following up about the Roadster claim of 1.9, and that was because they worked with Michelin to develop a special tire that would actually have enough. So like a funny car, like a drag race car or NASCAR, those kind of things, like they can do faster, but those are not production cars, right? Like it's not fair to it's like a Boeing 787 versus like an F-18. Like, yeah, of course the F-18 can do these faster maneuvers, or
have you ever
Joe's
seen
pilot or something.
How a dragster tire actually works, really? It's like its own gearbox.
Yeah, well, and it's super soft rubber.
Yeah, and it's very deflated, like unbelievably deflated. So a whole huge amount of contact patch sits there, and then the crazy part is the rim will start to spin under, like inside it even, and it curls up.
And you see the spin. Now, my buddy Brooks over at Drag Times.
And then how when it goes faster, it actually expands and makes the gear ratio taller too. Like, it's crazy. Super crazy.
So in a drag strip, like a legit drag strip, is also super, super sticky.
Yes.
Like you can't even walk across it. It'll like pull your shoes off.
Yeah. Yep.
You know.
I've done that.
So it's pretty. Yeah. I mean, so better performance. Like I'm very curious what that means because honestly, like I bet if you threw a better tire on the existing one, it would do better. Right. I bet that's probably the biggest limiting factor now.
And it's a heavy car. The Model S and Model X are extremely heavy cars. If they can really, take out a bunch of weight in the battery packs, it will undoubtedly become faster than it is right now.
That is, assuming the tires can hang on.
Yeah. Which is really cool.
So speaking of performance, it looks like What quarter are we in? 3?
Well, we're now in 3. Yeah.
Okay. It looks like this quarter is ramping up to be one of the biggest in Tesla history. So another leak. I feel like Tesla is finally coming around to the strategy of like strategically leaking info. I don't know if like it's just everyone else, every other company out there. Like Google notoriously, it's like everything about a product before it gets leaked. Same with like the new iPhone thing where it has like the 3 camera bit or whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyways, there's apparently a new leak. This is like in addition to the other leak, which I did a video on already. So I'll show you a little bit of that. But apparently Tesla has already delivered over 33,000 vehicles this quarter, and they're aiming for 36,000 more. So that would put them
we're still in Q2.
We are. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because it's June, right?
See, when you have kids and you're an entrepreneur, you just can't.
It's all just numbers.
Your brain is gone. Yeah. So anyways, so that would put them at about 99,000. Possibly they could reach 100,000 deliveries for the first time in their history. And this would be a massive success for them for this quarter, which would be a big rebound from Q1 where deliveries were still up 110% year over year, but they were down from the previous quarter as they were transitioning to Europe and Asia for their deliveries. So in the video I did using, I didn't have these exact numbers, but I had similar numbers. You can see here, we went from Q1 of 2018 to Q2 of 2018 was a 36% increase in sales. If Tesla were able to do this, the number I had modeled in my graph here was 91,000. So if they were able to beat that and get 99,000, it'd even be more. But that would mean that we would have, close to a 50% jump in deliveries from Q1 to Q2 in 2019, which would then also be their highest delivery quarter in Tesla history. Possibly pushing them back to profitability, possibly not. The way money works isn't always the way the physical things kind of work. They either like lead or trail each other by a week or a couple weeks sometimes, when the funds actually get transferred or whatever. So there's a lot of like other questions as to what this would actually mean for the company. By the way, that's like has to be the most liked video I've ever done. Look at that, 3,000 likes to 82 dislikes. That's insane. Anyways, so this could be a hugely important quarter for Tesla, which would, obviously help with their stock. And let me just pull it here because I believe their stock is kind of on a tear these past few days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look at that, man. So on June 3rd, it was at 177, and now you're at 205. So just about 30 points up this week. Is that this week? God, I'm so out of it.
That's in like 3 or 4 days.
I have like 6 family members in town. I mean, it's just and I have 3 videos that I need to finish. Okay, sorry. I'll quit complaining about my job.
I'm the same way, man. I'm the same way. I'm just trying to organize my life before I go to Texas and then to Las Vegas and then probably California, and it's just how it works.
Yeah. Now, did you hear Ryan McCaffrey's interview with Elon?
I did. He was on. Yeah, Elon went on Ryan McCaffrey's podcast.
Yep, the Ride the Lightning podcast. It was me and I think a lot of the folks in the Tesla community were really stoked because Ryan has been following Tesla and covering them for 200 weeks now. This was his 200th episode where he actually sat down with Ryan. And the cool thing was a lot of the interviews I've heard really are often like biased towards the interviewer's perspective, right? So if the person interviewing them is focused on autonomous vehicles, all the questions are going to be about autonomous vehicles. You know, if the interviewer is focused on one specific aspect of one of his companies, that's all you're going to get out of the interview.
Yeah.
Ryan focused on Tesla, but has been following it for so long. I felt did an amazing job of asking the questions that people actually care about.
Cool.
One of them was a question that I had that I got to ask Elon on that call. So selfishly, I was, jumping up and down in my car as I was driving when I heard this, and that was whether or not
that's
Tesla
not
would
recommended.
support.
Don't jump in your car while driving.
Yeah, well, I have the Model X, so I have enough room now. But apparently, Elon responded to the question about whether or not Tesla could have third-party apps and games. I think that's how they transitioned into that, was about, hey, you've got all these games. Apparently, Cuphead is coming out, which every Tesla owner in the world was like, what is Cuphead? Except for Ryan, who's a gaming nerd, and is like, oh, yeah, I know the developers personally. Great. Good for you, Ryan. For the rest of us, we're like, huh? But that led into, hey, could you actually support third-party apps? Because in the Model S and Model X, there's actually a tab in setting, or there used to be, called apps. Yep. So it was very clearly defined. And, so I'm a part of TesLab, and we actually have looked at the APIs and even met with Tesla and their technical team. And they're like, we don't officially have an API that's supported, but it was clearly designed with that idea. So... well, I think we could see it, man. I think it could come. So Elon's response was like, it doesn't really make sense financially to do this until we have, millions of cars on the road. And Ryan was kind of like, well, yeah, you have 1 million cars next year, maybe it could come. So I'm optimistic because that was just a little nugget. And in the interview, I thought it was just really, really great to hear a real kind of subject matter expert ask him questions, because they were so pressing. Like every question, I was like, yes. Those are the questions I want answered. Yeah. So
that's how I hope. I think that's the difference between a traditional journalist or even an expert, like you said, in a field, versus someone that has just this overall view of a company. Like I hope when I interview Elon that fans and people that follow along are cheering as well, because I hope that I think I offer that perspective too, of like knowing what people are really aching to know at the time, and really those questions that you're just like, I want an answer to this, that's not like, and as a fan, sometimes the worst thing you can do is hear an interviewer ask the same question that's been asked 40 times and you hear the same exact answer. Like, you just wasted 7 minutes, Yeah. So that was cool for listening to Ryan's interview like that.
One of the questions I thought was interesting, I don't know if you caught it, was the image of the truck. Was that the front or the back?
That was a good question.
Yeah, because everyone, and also, it's so funny. In some ways, Tesla, like, I've seen stuff come out, and I'm like, I've never imagined a company more kind of watched than Tesla. Like, before the Model 3 was out, there was something where they updated the code on the website. Like, it wasn't visible. So if you looked at the webpage, you didn't see anything. But there was like a little snippet of code that was preparing for them to add the Model 3. And it had something about the watt hours per mile, the efficiency rating of the Model 3, essentially. Because that's essentially they store that on the page itself, and then they feed in other variables, and it calculates everything on the fly. And so some of it you can store locally because it's, it's just public information. It's not a big deal. It's like, it's right there. Yep. But the Model 3 wasn't out yet, so this was a big deal. Literally minutes after this completely hidden piece of code appears on the website, it's on Reddit, and like thousands of votes and just like comments. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. So for them to show that image of the truck at the event and nobody catch it, 0 people got an image of it, is like, dang, how dumb are we? I guess... I don't know.
Well, he even said kind of in the interview, like, we didn't do a very good job of making it, like, known at all. Like, he's like, we should have made it up on the screen longer or something, kind of hinted at the idea that, whoops, it was too cryptic.
Yeah, and the deal was kind of like, hey, okay, everyone go outside to go get your ride in the Model Y, and everyone's like, ah, and they just took off, and then they showed it for like half a second.
Yeah.
So
and
literally everybody was like gone, and they're like, yay, and a person came up to me, they're like, hey, did you see the thing? I'm like, no. They're like, well, I think it was the truck. I don't know. It just looked like a line, and it's like, okay,
That's
great.
funny. That's funny. Yeah, that I didn't quite get the sense still that, I mean, it did sound like he wants to do an app store someday, but it basically just I've heard him kind of say that, like, it just doesn't make sense. But
yeah.
do you really get a sense that he was acting like they're actually considering it in the near future?
I don't know about near future, but it definitely seemed that he was open to it. Whereas when I asked the question, he was basically just completely, the answer was a hard no.
Yeah.
So maybe it was more of a maybe right now.
Here's what I think he is underestimating, though, is the idea that he's like, why would anyone develop it? It's like, who cares why? Like, people are fans of the work. If you work at Spotify on the weekends and you own a Tesla, you better believe on the weekend you're going to port it over to make it work on the Tesla. Like, what are you talking about? I
mean, people have already made these kind of quasi porting of it already, of Spotify on there. I mean,
with no support really hard to do.
Right, like I think he maybe underestimates I don't know what you want to call it, I would call it the hacker community, but it's more like the maker community, like the DIY kind of folks. Like if you, especially me, like I'm more of a hacker in that sense because mostly what I do is software. So if you gave me hooks into this car, I would build all kinds of cool things. Mm-hmm. But if I have to like physically take the car apart to do something, I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm not.
Right.
Like I'm out of my depth. I'm gonna trip a wire and the whole thing's gonna brick itself and I can't touch it. Like that's too much. But if I can just hit an API like I did with the Face ID video, hell yeah, let's do it. Like I would love that. Now there is some overhead on their side where they have to actually support these APIs and actually document them and create them and
security risks
make sure that
and
they're
all that
running.
stuff.
Yeah. So I get that there's not maybe a ton of money on it, but like I guarantee you, a Spotify or a Waze or these people, like it's you just put an intern on this or a couple interns for a week and it would be done.
Yeah. Easy. Honestly.
Yeah. And from their standpoint, I mean, like let's say Spotify gets another couple 100,000 users. Okay. Like people were already probably Spotify users. Maybe they're listening longer. Like financially, it probably doesn't matter much, but all these little things stack up, and they end up meaning something big, right? And so, I think I would love that.
Yeah.
But so interesting stuff. And I don't know if people are going to catch any of these other. They need to be less subtle about it. Speaking of in terms of catching things.
Nice that you did it. You win this week. There's some updates. We've talked about Mr. Steven quite a bit here, which is of course the drone ship, or not the drone ship. Well, it's a ship that is intended to catch a fairing for SpaceX, and they now have the cool thing here is they have upgraded the arms. The arms came down in like February, just before Falcon Heavy. It came back into port with its tail between its legs, or its arms in the sea, or something, where it had came back into the sea missing some parts, some hardware. And now it's ready to go again. This is from Tom Cross with Teslarati, has a picture of it back in the port in Florida. Unfortunately, the next launch, well, not unfortunately, but the next launch is actually going to be out of California, which is just going to be in about a week from today, a little under a week from today. And Mr. Steven will not be attempting to catch a fairing. Now, we should probably talk a little bit about how they kind of gave up or made it almost seem like they might be giving up on the idea of catching fairings for a second, because they're just starting to fish them out of the water now. And it's kind of like, well, why do you need to even try catching them?
Yeah.
And there's some good speculation going around here. A few different things. Number one is that the fairings that they catch and retrieve, they can use for internal missions like Starlink, where Starlink is designed in a way that it doesn't need as much insulation. They're really like kind of rugged, durable, just cheap satellites, that they can just stick together, all stacked on top of each other, shaking each other anyway. So they don't need that like acoustic foam on the inside of the fairings. So it doesn't really matter if the fairings get wet for that, as long as they're structurally sound. But some of the internal components that would probably be really important on some other spacecraft don't matter as much for internal missions with SpaceX. So SpaceX, it sounds like they're probably going to be the ones happy enough, no problem. They'll reuse the fairings that have taken a dunk. But it's, then it's kind of speculated that it might be hard to sell that concept to someone with $1 billion satellite,
Yeah, I'm not going to go with the cheaper option here when I've already spent $1 billion there.
I don't want my $6 million. Save $2 million or whatever. We don't care. Give us the new fairings.
Yeah, that's not significant enough. Yeah.
But if those fairings have never touched water and, all that stuff, it just might be a better thing altogether. So they're still trying to do this. And I think that's cool just because it's back up in the port. But we should probably real quick mention, I mentioned $1 billion satellite. SpaceX is the launch in 6 days on the West Coast is actually going to be, I think, their most expensive satellite program. It's actually 3 separate satellites that they've ever launched.
Yeah, when is that? June 10th, 11th?
It is currently scheduled for the 12th at this moment. It kind of moved around a little bit.
So next Wednesday?
Yep, next Wednesday. And it's 3 satellites for the Canadian Space Agency, basically. And they're all basically like, there's a maritime surveillance, there's a disaster management, and an ecosystem monitoring. So 3 big, heavy, expensive satellites. And the fun thing about this launch in particular is the booster. They were debating whether or not it could land back at the landing pad on land, or if they had to do a drone ship landing. And do you know why? What the determining factor was, whether or not they could land on land or had to use the drone ship?
Well, I would imagine it's the weight of the payload and how much fuel it takes, right? Because it takes fuel to turn back around.
Well, that's a known variable, so they wouldn't have to debate that.
Oh, okay.
You're right. You're absolutely right. That's normally the main factor here. But on this one, even for the past month, we're sitting here as watchers of the stuff trying to figure out whether or not the booster was going to be able to land at land or the ocean, and it had nothing to do with its performance. Do you know what the variable was?
Well, in California, we're all hippies and we love animals. So
and I
maybe
said
it
it in
had
the
to do
intro.
something with an animal.
I said it in the intro that
the baby seals.
Baby seals. Yep.
But these boots I got are so nice. I'm kidding.
Oh, you jerk. So yeah, basically it's mating season apparently, like basically February through June. And I think they got approval to do, they don't want to have, when a booster comes back into land, if you're within 20, 30, 40, 50 kilometers of it, you're going to hear the sonic booms, and they're very disruptive and very loud. And just to make sure they're not stressing out baby cub seals, they wanted to wait until they had moved away from the region. And so it sounds like they may have moved away from the region, and they have been approved, we think. So it sounds like it's going to be landing at LZ4, which is the landing pad on the west coast at Vandenberg. So this will be hopefully a return to launch site landing.
I might have to go up there for that.
Oh, this will be a fun one. I think it'll be in the morning, if I recall. Oh wait, no, it's evening.
Off?
No, it's morning. It's morning.
Oh yeah, it lands like 6 minutes, 7 minutes later.
Like 8 minutes, 8:10,
yeah.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you'd be there. You have to be up in Vandenberg area if you really want to see that. The launch is at 7 a.m.
Yeah, so I'd have to drive up Tuesday night.
Yeah, definitely. You would definitely have to drive up Tuesday night. I was thinking I actually have press credentials for this launch, but I was debating with the whole trying to go down to Texas thing, and I have a thing in Vegas the week after that, and then a thing in San Francisco the week after that. So it's just, yeah.
So just send them to me, and I'll just wear your glasses, and then
there you go.
Yeah, white guy, beard, glasses, whatever. Like
this is Tim, probably, sure. Yeah, so that'll be a fun mission to watch though. A morning, like that'll be just gorgeous lighting, probably, Which, by the way, because it's morning, isn't there that's when the marine layer, the fog is normally pretty bad.
You might not be able to see it really, unless you had. Can they ever put like a drone in the air with a camera?
Yeah.
That might work.
They sometimes shoot that stuff just above the cloud layer. There's like I saw a shot once where at Vandenberg after it had cleared everything. You got this gorgeous shot after that, but hard to tell
I don't know
really.
up there though, because that's like just north of Santa Barbara.
Oh, it's very foggy. It's
unbelievable.
It's that's intentional. That's why they put the missile silos there. I mean, a lot of that was there
so you wouldn't see it.
You wouldn't see it, so you can have the shroud of privacy at all times, And
there's that whole thing with the coast there and the seals is nuts. Like, did you ever hear about the elephant seals? And they have a mating season as well, where like the freeway is closed because they're like 1,300 pounds or no, it's like 13 tons or something. It's like they're massive. They're like the size of an elephant, and they're just like on the 101 freeway.
Really?
Yeah, and like if you hit one, you'll die. Like like you will lose this race. And so there's a thing, and they keep trying to build a bigger wall to keep them away from it, and they're just so massive they just keep knocking them down. I thought it might be up near Santa Cruz or something. It might be a bit further.
What if they go out on the launch pad and start knocking over rockets and stuff?
I wouldn't be shocked, man. I could totally see like, elephant seal attacks Falcon 9 or something.
Oh my gosh! Imagine if it landed and then an adult seal just is like, "What is that? I gotta go take care of this." And
yeah. It's a real thing. It's weird. And I hear these stories because I'm out here in California, and it's like up in Davis, up in near Sacramento, they have like this bridge, and they built a bridge with a tunnel underneath it for the frogs. So that way the frogs didn't get ran over when they were crossing the freeway.
No way.
And you're like, of course, this is in Davis, California. Of course this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it saves the county money in the long run, though, of not having to scrape up frogs off the freeway every week,
Yeah, who knows? And is
crazy.
this going to be the last launch, or that has already happened, or is this a new contract? Because I remember we talked about it before, where like whoever their client was on the West Coast is done or something.
That's
so we're not gonna
one
see
of their
anymore.
clients. I mean, that was Iridium had finished up that constellation. There's still anytime any satellite launch that needs to do a polar orbit will always be launching out of Vandenberg. So any of these Earth observations where these are just going basically above the North and South Pole, and you let the Earth spin underneath it, and you pass over every spot on Earth every day. Every inch of the Earth is covered by a totally polar orbit satellite. So, there's still plenty of satellites that will operate in this, and do this, but it's just not nearly, once the Iridium constellation was set up, it's kind of like, oh, crap, they're not going to get nearly as many. Because it went from like 4 or 5 launches a year out of Vandenberg, now it's probably going to be like 2 a year.
Yeah.
1 to
so
2.
if you want to go polar orbit, you're kind of stuck with Vandenberg, right? In
Correct.
terms of the U.S.
Yes.
Speaking of anything else being stuck lately, Tim? Is anything in the space industry?
Jeez. Is this, wow, laser focused Ben over here with the, this is a fun story because I don't think we've really talked about it yet. But it's one of those, like, I would love to sit in on these meetings when the people at JPL and at NASA try to figure out a problem from a freaking another planet. Like, can you imagine you're sitting here on Earth trying to figure out how to get your a probe that is stuck crooked. Like, how do you get it unstuck from another planet?
Yeah, tell me what this is. I missed the headline. What is it?
So this is the headline of this particular article is Engineers Craft New Plan to Unstick NASA's Mars InSight Lander. So a little friendly reminder, InSight launched last year, early last year, like I think April. It landed, 6-7 months later, whatever it was, like November, December. Probably should have brushed up on that. But that launched from the West Coast. And it landed on Mars, and it's not a rover, it's a lander. So it doesn't have wheels. This is the one that this is basically a table. It's like a scientific table that landed itself with thrusters. And then now it's deployed all these different instruments. So it had like a Marsquake seismometer. It had a few other crazy things. But one of the big scientific instruments is a probe that is actually meant to, it's called a mole, and it's supposed to just kind of be self-tapping itself down like 5 meters deep or something like that. And it designed to dig 16 feet, so 5 meters deep, yep. And it's supposed to observe Mars's inner heat flow. Now I'm trying to see if they have more. I'm going to let this video kind of play through while I talk about this, because this is really quite fascinating, actually. But basically, what happened is, like I said, it's supposed to self-tap itself and go down by millimeter at a time. and it got down like literally less than, it was like 30 centimeters or something, and it got stuck. It started turning right as soon as it went into the ground, and then got completely stuck and has been incapable since February basically. And it stinks because this is a major instrument that they're really wanting to use, and it's just not even near deep enough to make good observations. You know, it's supposed to measure the temperature of basically inside of Mars, and you know, here it is stuck outside of Mars basically. So they're gonna try to do something pretty crazy. Let me
So it
fast
didn't
forward.
tip over. It just is going in at the wrong angle, or
Correct. It is now stuck like this basically in this video. If you're watching, it's just stuck at, let's say, I don't know, 15-degree angle or so. And they don't know if it hit a rock and that's why it started going, you know, over a bit. Or the other thing that's really interesting is this would basically, one of the other things they're assuming is actually if the soil doesn't have enough friction, that it doesn't work. Then you'd think if it had low friction, it'd easily just be able to go into the ground.
Yeah.
But there's a certain threshold or something where it requires friction to actually be able to drill itself down. So what they're going to try to do is they're going to try and take off. There's this kind of unit, this tower unit thing, a structure support that is currently over top of it. And in order to even get an idea of exactly what's going on and just to photograph it, they're going to try to remove the structure support. This has been after a few months of practice and trying to figure it out. So you can see in this video now, it's showing that the tower is obstructing the actual probe. So you cannot get a good sense of what's actually happening, unfortunately. And so they have developed an idea that they're just going to try and very carefully, very slowly remove that support structure on top, back it off, and then be able to observe what's going on. And one of the ideas they have, if it's stuck like that for sure, is actually compacting the sand a little bit using a shovel nearby to increase the friction, move it around a little bit maybe. They're going to try all sorts of little things, and I'm excited to see this one work out. It'd just be fun to sit there and watch them problem solve this and tackle and look at their data and go, here's what's happening. You know, it's crazy. This is classic.
They need Mark Watney just to go over there and just shake it a little bit.
Just jiggle it. Some guy just kick it.
Pick it up and move it over here.
Yeah, move it 2 inches or something. Sorry, a few centimeters. Yeah. But this is one of those things that I hope that they get figured out, because this is a very critical tool and should be able to provide really, really good observations of Mars. And gosh, it's just a shame. Can you imagine? What if it just, bad luck, there's literally a small rock and they just happen to place it down right on top of the rock? I mean, yeah.
That's why we need people there. That's why we got to send some people there.
Yeah, that's the type of thing that a person can do, that adjustment in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And it might take a full year of scientists to be able to figure that out.
That's exactly, Elon's whole thing with the robots versus people. It's like originally they thought, robots can do everything. And then you just figure out, maybe, but man, people are really good at certain things.
Yeah. Yep. That's true. The other fun thing about this, though, that I should note, this is kind of like one time a lander on, I think we talked about this on the show, maybe a Venus lander that Russia sent, or I guess the Soviet Union sent. And
it didn't land though, right? It tumbled or something, or
nope. This one landed, did everything perfect, and all it had to do is stick a probe down into the ground to feel how the density of the ground, and unfortunately, the lens cap popped off and fell right exactly where that probe goes. So they're measuring the density
the lens cap.
of the lens cap. They sent a lens cap to Venus to measure how dense it is what that ended up being. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, man. Well, Venus is such an interesting story, right? Because I saw some articles about what happened there with the runaway greenhouse gas is kind of what scientists are afraid of here, right? Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, Venus should be habitable.
It's very closely related to Earth in almost every aspect.
Yeah, like other than this runaway greenhouse gas that put it into the state it's in now, in theory, it could support life, if I recall.
Well, so Venus and Mars and Earth are 3 different versions of the same concept. I mean, we're all within very habitable zones of or near habitable zones of the sun. And, the more we study those planets, the more we actually understand Earth, because we can get new data from different variables different data sets and say, oh, that's what happens when this variables change. Oh, that's what would happen in our reality or our world. So that's one of the biggest reasons I think it's important to study Mars and Venus, is so that we have a better grasp and more data for our own planet.
It's like electric cars, right? There's like, the iPace, a Tesla, and then some Audi thing. And like, they're all technically electric cars, but the Tesla's the one you want. That's really, like, the other two are just inhabitable. You just really don't want to be messing with those things,
Oh man. Now we got thumbs down.
I'm worse than the Apple fanboys when it comes to electric cars.
Hey, should we talk about that quick?
Oh my God.
Joe's not here. I do want to talk. I want your opinion because we're briefly going to touch on a topic. This is still part of our ludicrous future, I feel like, because in my opinion, this is tech. Future technology.
Things. Although I don't know how, like, okay. Yeah, you introduce it. You probably know more than me, but I'll bring it up on the screen here.
Okay. So for those of you that don't know, on Monday, Apple released a new Mac Pro, which is for the pro community. We're talking, this is the thing that people forget, pro community.
Not prosumer.
Not prosumer, not college kid, professional, work class, enterprise class community. I knew it. Oh, Ben.
I have an image of it here. It's $8.88 at Amazon.
God. I'm going to revoke controls of the screen share for you. Ben pulled up a cheese grater because, yes, the new Mac Pro looks like it's a cheese grater. That is actually pretty funny.
Okay, so here I'll zoom in on the shot on the photo so you can't tell, and I'll just go back and forth between which one is it? Is it a cheese grater or a Mac Pro?
Dang it. Okay, but basically this is their first run in a long time at an actual. They've still had the iMac Pro is kind of your prosumer, more heavy duty version of an iMac, and it outran, it had better specs than their Mac Pro, the last one, which was the trash can one. It called the trash can because it looks like
you gotta love their design. Like, okay, guys, are we going more cheese grater or more trash can with this design? Let's figure this out.
Come on, though, you can't lie and say this isn't a beautiful piece of machinery, though.
The cheese grater thing bothers me. It looks really confusing, but I love we're playing a little animation here of how you take the case off. I think that's a pretty cool design. Yeah. I'm really glad that they're embracing what I guess me and many others would call actual computers. Right.
Modularity.
Well, it's a tower. I mean, do you remember the specs off the top of your head, or should we read them here for people?
Yeah, no, it's the big thing here is it finally has some significant. Yeah, go ahead and here's the options. I can't quite see some of that, but
okay, so you can do a 8-core to 28-core.
These are all Intel chipsets.
Yep, you can spec up to
1.5
terabytes of RAM. Which is, it's funny. We used to do that stuff at Facebook. I'll tell you a story about that in a second. Now, the thing, I don't know where it's listed here. I'm trying to find just the specs. Maybe click on where it says specs, dummy. But, okay, so the cool thing I really think that I'm really happy about what Apple's doing here is, the processor great, the CPU great. It has some serious GPU performance here, which is great because for kind of randomly... Macs were terrible at this, up until this computer. Like they weren't nearly up to par with like what you could get from a PC for relatively cheap. So you have really great kind of GPU support. You have this massive power supply. I mean, it's a power supply for a computer that's measured in kilowatts. Yeah. That's how powerful it is. Typically, like a powerful, like I think in my computer, it's like 600 watts or something.
And that'd be a pretty hefty power supply.
And that's a lot, yeah. So 1.4 means you can, power your Tesla with this or something like that. Here's where I got excited about this. The expansion slots. So, unlike every other Mac product I've ever been aware of, you can actually, upgrade this thing and add things to it. And it's customizable. And it's not just, hey, we gave you everything that you'll ever need and don't question us, and that's it. One of Apple's famous things is, why would you ever need a second mouse button? things like that, right? You're like, because I do. But, this is great because it means you can actually add things. You can add, so a PC, if you guys are completely, you don't know what I'm talking about, these are like spaces, like ports in your computer where you can plug in additional circuit boards that give you additional functionality.
Yep.
So if you wanted to add a special sound processing or audio input or something, like let's say you wanted to have your guitar plugged into it or something, you can do things like that where Mac themselves or Apple themselves may not have built that in.
And real quick, let me remind you, the old tower had expandability like that. They had PCI slots and all that stuff.
The G5?
Yep, exactly. But, and the other thing, the reason they kind of, one of the thoughts was, if you have a big enough throughput via, Thunderbolt 2, Thunderbolt 3 protocol, you have everything you need to do, external things with a PCI. You can even have just an external PCI card. Plugged in, and the function would theoretically function the same, but people don't want 10 different devices stacked on top of their computer. They want built-in support, all that stuff, I think is what.
Well, and plus when you're running over USB or something like that, the data transfer rate might not be good enough, right?
Well, Thunderbolt 3 protocol is insane. Like, it's nuts.
Right, 40
it's
gigabits
insane.
a second,
Yeah.
So, in general, I think this is really cool. The cheese grater design just makes me laugh. Like, I will never stop laughing about that. Like that is, and someone actually had a funny comment. They said, "Hey Apple, I don't know where you guys live, but the rest of us have this thing known as dust. So this thing is going to be a freaking nightmare. Look at this." But I mean, okay. So anything else about this you want to say before we get on to the funny stuff? I mean.
Let me say, dust. All computers ingest dust. I don't get what that argument is. And if you have a simple,
if you want to clean this, it's going to be a nightmare. Is the idea?
I don't think it's going to be that different than any other computer, personally. But
okay.
But the thing is here, before we get to the funny stuff, is. Are you considering price part of the funny stuff? I'm assuming you're considering price part of the funny stuff.
No, the monitor specifically.
The monitor. Well, let's talk about the price of this because the computer alone starts at $6,000.
Right.
$6,000 for just a pretty basic, pretty run of the mill basic computer, and that is over twice as expensive after you function in inflation to the G5 tower they used to have and the 2013 tower. So the 2013 tower and the trash can and the G5, all of those after you adjust for inflation were around $3,000 starting price. And this is starting at $6,000, and it's really not that much better than or arguably isn't better really than the iMac Pro, which includes a 5K monitor. But the one thing that we didn't mention too is it does have a hardware accelerator specifically designed for like ProRes files and stuff, which, oh my gosh, I'm starting to get into that world here with video editing, and that is amazing. Like, if they can speed up my workflow, when I did that 50-minute Raptor video, that particular chipset wouldn't really help me too much in After Effects, but having a crazy powerful GPU and say I had like 256 gigs of RAM and a ton of GRAM, a graphics card RAM, I think I could have got that video out in literally a week faster. And a week of free time means an extra video basically for everybody else.
I still think for major workloads like that, what we're going to see are these cloud options, man, where you can say, oh, let me just spin up 100 computers and distribute the load across all 100. And and it's a software thing where you have these, server computers, really cool. Servers, which are just, there's no pro product, there's no consumer product that even comes close to the performance of these server products. So, that would be where I think personally it'll be like, oh yeah, cool. I'm just like, in Costa Rica traveling, whatever. Let me just do this. And once we have Starlink with gigabit internet, wherever we're at, blah, blah, blah. Like, there it is. Click a button. So, I mean, I think this is cool, but I still see in my opinion, the future of computing of heavy workloads like that won't be done locally.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless you're like, I don't know, the NSA or somebody that needs local, or NASA, let's say, probably can't rely on like Amazon Cloud to do this stuff, right? Like you need to have your own control of that. But for most people, I would say that's my guess.
That's a good point. Yeah. So you're probably gonna poop your pants then over the next part.
Well, yeah. Last thing we'll say about this is the Linus from Linus Tech Tips, who I'm a big fan of, had a really funny comment. He said, "So $6,000 for this computer," and he listed out the specs. He's like, "I wonder if we can beat that." And at $6,000, what you get is stupidly expensive. For what you could get in a PC comparative, like which it's funny because Macs have always had this stigma around being expensive, but honestly, typically when you would spec out a PC version of what is truly in a Mac, the price actually was comparable typically, but they had this stigma because they only sold like their versions of things which had the specific hardware. So yes, they were more expensive, but it was also better. Like I used to run,
upgrades were crazy expensive. Like if you want to double your RAM, it's like $800, and it's like that cost you $50 worth of RAM. And that's the stuff too that they got a really bad stigma for.
Yeah. So but this, when you're looking at the low end version of the Mac Pro, compare it to a PC, it is laughable how poor, how little you get for that dollar amount. But you can also spec this thing up to just crazy amounts of stuff, which you could probably do with the PC. But I don't know where they'll go. I'm sure Linus and those guys will do it. But
yeah,
clearly the headlines, or what I'm seeing just all over everywhere with Twitter, has to be the monitor, because the monitor is.
Hey, on my end, you're sharing the wrong screen here. You're sharing like the whole desktop.
Whoops, my bad.
I mean, it wasn't a big deal. Just like off center.
Yeah, this is what you want.
There we go.
So it's called Pro Display XDR. And before I poo-poo all over this, do you want to talk good about it? Like, do you know anything about what this is?
This is, I can't believe, there is one aspect to poo-poo, but the monitor is not the aspect to poo-poo. This is unbelievable. This is insane.
The price is kind of crazy. It's $5,000 for the monitor.
That's nothing.
Well, yeah, it's probably the best monitor you've ever seen in your life.
Well, and we're talking, this is comparing to studio, like actual studio monitors, which are literally 30, 40, 50 grand.
Uh-huh.
And so this is a steal. And this does things that no studio monitor can do currently. I mean, it's unbelievable. So this to me almost makes up for the Mac tax, because trust me, if you actually start looking at proper monitors, legit, color graded, what is at the end of the house when you're actually the last person to sit there and master a film, they're sitting on a pro monitor, which is 40 grand. And if you can do this for 5 grand and at brightness levels never seen before, extended brightness levels, like over 1,000 nits or 1,000 nits sustained brightness, crazy high HDR values, crazy high contrast ratios, crazy high brightness, like I mean, and 6K, it's insane. It's an incredible piece of machinery, and I will do everything I can to try to save up to get. I would love 2 of them because it would look good on a desk having 2 as opposed to just 1. But I want one of these so bad. I mean, 5,000. And that's because it's 5 times cheaper than a monitor that I would have liked to have in the first place.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at it that way. I'm not looking at it as like the monitors I use now are $1,500 monitors, and they're just the best thing I could afford.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. So I actually just upgraded my setup here, and it was a monitor, and I paid $1,300 for it. And it's this, 38 inch ultra widescreen LG 4K, or no, I think it's a 5K, and it's like, 99% sRGBA, blah, 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 like color corrected and all that. So, and it's funny because now I look at my laptop and I'm like, I can't look at that thing. It's like, it's like when you went from the old, cathode ray tube to like an LCD screen for the first time. And you're like, what have I been doing all my life?
Yep.
So the monitor seems great. It is stupid expensive for a consumer. Right.
Yes.
For the vast majority of people, you do not. This is a way more than what you need.
Way overkill.
Even for us, it's probably, because unless like Tim, you do kind of more cinematic things, so you probably have a use case for it. For me, there is 0 chance I would ever need something like this personally, because I just never get that deep. Even though I make videos for a living, it's not like I need that level of detail.
Well, some of the things that I'm going to be working on, I do want a proper work class grade monitor or two.
Right. Yeah. So for you, anyone that's doing really high production value cinematic stuff, right? Like if you're shooting in RAW with cinema lenses and stuff like that, sure, this makes a whole lot of sense. Now, the goofy part of this whole thing is that while the monitor cost $5,000, the piece of metal that holds the monitor above, in the air so you can look at it, is $1,000.
Yeah.
For the stand, the monitor stand.
That's not a ludicrous future.
You can buy like a legit laptop that serves millions of people's needs for cheaper than you can buy this monitor stand. It is stupid. Yeah. And now Marquez, had the best point or the best way I thought about this, where he said, look, so the way Apple did it was they had a whole keynote around this whole thing, and it's like this stand was featured separately as its own thing, and it was $1,000. And you're going, what? Why didn't you just say the monitor is $6,000?
Right.
And if you don't want the stand, it's $5,000. Because if you're in a studio, you're just going to mount them on the wall. You don't need a stand. That's stupid. But the fact that they highlighted it and they even put it on display as its own item, is
with
so
the $1,000 price tag. And they try to get off it quickly because the crowd literally gasped and laughed out loud, basically. What? Yeah, that is. I hope that they lower that price, because even if they don't, guess what? People are going to come around and they're going to release stands that look identical, have the same functionality for $200. Because it is a nice piece of machinery. It's going to cost, even if you were to make your own version of it, it's going to cost you some money. Yeah. Now, when you go full screen, we can't actually see it, by the way.
I'm not. Oh, okay. I'm just showing this here.
So and then they got off it right away. It just literally, they showed Pro Stand $1,000 next.
Yeah, that was it. So we're on. I'm looking at the video on YouTube here. Somebody's posted it. I don't know. And
what is it? 4 seconds.
And so wait, is it $200 for the actual mount as well?
So the Visa mount is separate. So the stand can stand on its own, obviously, and plug into a kind of a magnetic back thing on the back of the stand. But the if you want to attach it to some other stand, the standard in the industry is a Visa mount or Vesa mount, however you say it, and that's $200 just to make it so you can use it. Period. That should have been included no matter what. The stand should be $200.
Wait, so can you connect the Pro stand to the Pro monitor without this Visa mount? Yes,
you can attach the Pro stand without the Visa mount. But you cannot attach, when you buy a monitor, you cannot attach it to anything without spending at least $200.
If I bought the stand and I wanted to put a different monitor on it, I would need this mount.
I don't actually know if it works that way. Because the Visa mount is so you can mount it to other mounts. Because there's a lot of the ones that clamp onto desks and stuff. So a lot of people do that at a workstation. They'd swap out a monitor by unmounting it from their stand.
So
if
I buy the new Pro, whatever it's called, monitor, and want to put it on my mount, I buy this Visa mount for $200.
Yes.
Oh. I hope badly want to man, how great! Do you remember those guys that would smash new iPhones as soon as they got them? I so badly want someone. Do you remember that they'd wait in line back in the days when people would actually wait in line and go to a store and get it, and then they would just walk outside, unbox it, and just smash it on the ground and get people's reaction?
Yep.
I want to do that with this monitor. I want to get it and just be I want to put it on the wall. Here, you got a screw, and just freaking drill a screw right through it.
Oh my God. Oh God, I hate it. But yeah, so let's kind of reiterate before we move on, because we do have one more thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Or kind of a thing and a half. So, just to reiterate though, so I think the display itself, fantastic. I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about them making a proper professional studio grade computer with legit hardware. I want to real quick touch on that too, because people need to remember, a lot of people in my Discord channel are, maybe high schoolers or something. They have gaming PCs and they're sitting here going, I'm not saying that you have to be in high school to have a gaming PC. I'm just saying that some of the people that were talking specifically were, they're yeah, this is insane. I could build a computer just as fast for $1,500. It's you probably could. But are you going to rely on your $1,500 computer with on sale parts, that are that everything's warranted in different countries, and you're trying to get a film out in 4 hours, and all of a sudden the power supply crashes, or for instance, Ben, what happened to your computer, for instance?
Yeah, the liquid. So yeah, backstory. So I built my own computer, and I love it. It's incredible, but the liquid cooler on the CPU died. And at the time when I bought it, it was brand new. So the Amazon reviews were like, there was like 10 of them. They were all great. But now if you go back to that same one, it's terrible. So I had to take it in. I mean, I tried to troubleshoot as much as I could, sent it into the shop. It took like 3 weeks back and forth for them to basically test every single component and determine that's what it was. And then now we've swapped it out with a new one. So all in all, it's about $400 to fix. But had I not had another option, like a laptop or something, I would have been out a computer for like 3 weeks. So...
And that was all under warranty stuff. It still cost you $400, right?
I mean, yeah, but the part is $130, and I submitted a warranty claim, and I doubt I'll ever hear back from this company. So,
so that's the whole, like, when you are dealing with legitimately like professional grade videos, things on deadlines, things where you have a client waiting for you that are like, where is my video? Where's my product? And you need, like, that's what matters first and foremost is your schedule, and your time is money. And if you if you can take this machine, if something breaks and you walk into a Mac store and 30 minutes later walk out with the same version of it, that's worth a lot of money to studios or to someone like me potentially.
I would be very interested to see how they would actually do that. Like if I'm a professional studio, do I like a Paramount or something, right? Like if I'm making Avengers or X-Men or something,
which you are,
and if I have an issue, I mean, I guess at that scale, I have an in-house IT guy that's going to come fix it right there, and I probably have backups of all these systems. Like, but forget that. Like, just what about the performance? Like, how much am I, if I'm Paramount and I'm building an editing station for my video editor, which, by the way, in that world, there are 15 different people that edit, right, or more, right? You have people that just do coloring, for example. It's called a colorist. That's all they do, right? Then there's like, so whereas like me and you do all of these things, to do different degrees of success, they have different people that do all of them. I wonder, like, the performance of the machines that those folks use, how does that actually compare to this thing dollar for dollar? Like not just, is it faster or slower, but like, is it a deal for them? Like, economically, does it make sense? Because as a consumer, yeah, when you look at an iMac and you're like, wow, this thing's beautiful, and it has the 5K display, like, this is an expensive computer, but it's totally sufficient for the vast majority of people, like even YouTubers and everything else, right? But then, when you go to that next level, as you're talking about the monitors, how does it compare there?
To other things?
Like, I just have...
Yeah,
exactly. Like whatever kind of, like, I remember Avid was a system you would set up, and that would be like $30,000 for an Avid system.
Yep. Go spec out a Dell, an actual work class, Dell or HP, But
do they make those? Do they even make these systems?
Something. I mean, maybe not hardcore video focused, but of course, enterprise class, hardware like that gets to be 8, 10, 12, 15 grand really quickly.
Well, yeah, I mean, so the world I come from, we didn't do this. We did actual software and like high tech stuff. And yeah, the money you'd spend, it's funny. I remember a company I worked for that was in the financial, like fintech world. We would have to go through weeks of approvals to add 100 gigabytes to a server that we were running. And the cost would be like $15,000. And I just remember being like, how many iPhones can I buy for $15,000? And can I just like duct tape them together and plug them in?
Right.
Like, this is so stupid. I remember hating it, but that's data center equipment. That's not, I mean, maybe someone like a Paramount or Warner Brothers has a data center to process these things. I would not be shocked if they just have, in which case, I actually, if that were true, and I have friends that industry, I could probably ask, but if that were true, I would feel confident in saying that however high performance this thing is, it wouldn't even come close to an actual data center machine.
Right.
But the cost would actually be dramatically less.
Yeah.
Because just a server itself, without like any of the other parts, is going to be like $20,000. So, you know,
Yep.
yeah, I wonder who is going to really buy this and who it's for. That's what I'm wondering.
I intend to, depending, like, if it's not just apps. I mean, the problem is if you get 2 monitors and even a reasonably spec'd out machine, it'll be over 20 grand.
Well, in the highest end machine, I don't know if you've seen any official numbers, but I believe they said like $35,000 to $40,000 for the highest.
I won't be doing that, but
machine.
like
I mean, you could just buy another Tesla, you know, or you could buy this computer.
But if it honestly, I know this sounds ridiculous, but one time I literally added up when I bought what computer was that? I upgraded computers at one point, and it cost me like $4 grand. I spent $4,000 more on a new PC, and I added up if my render times were half. That's all it was. It was like, if I can break my render time in half, how long will it take me to pay myself back that money at X amount of money per hour? And it was something hilarious, like 4 months. I'd pay it back, and I intended to use the machine for 2 or 3 years. Yeah. So it's like that is a no-brainer. And it's like less stressful. It's your workflow. You actually work better because if something renders and you're still sitting here, you don't totally get distracted and run out the door to go do something else or whatever. If you're able to pop something off in 12 seconds versus 45 seconds, even, that's it.
Oh, it's massive. Yeah.
Big deal.
That's why. I had an iMac. I don't know if it was the iMac Pro, but it was the highest end iMac you could buy at the time that I bought it. I think it might have been right before the iMac Pro came out. And I had a MacBook Pro laptop. And I think the computer stuff that Apple makes is generally fantastic. The design is great. The hardware is actually really good. And so I've always had that. And I love how Mac OS is based on Linux, because in the data world, a lot of the stuff you do is writing code in Python and these other things. And it's just easier to use Linux as kind of your base level foundation for your OS versus whatever Windows is based on. But then when it came to video editing, my iMac was just an absolute dog. And so that's when I did the same calculus you did, and that's when I ended up building this PC. I think I spent $4 grand on it, and it was night and day. It was me versus Usain Bolt on 100 meters. It was not even a contest when I built my PC out, Now I have had that one issue. But I had a couple issues with iMac as well that I had to take in, and they were like, I don't know, let's format your hard drive. I'm like, dude, no, this is not the answer.
That's not the answer. Yeah.
So I don't know, like nothing's perfect.
Yep.
I think Mac makes great hardware. I hate the company's attitude towards their ecosystem and how they try to do that. But I really wonder who's going to buy this. Like you, okay,
right.
People like Marquez, okay, but if it's really geared towards the visual effects companies, like what are those called? Rhythm and Blues? No, I forget what they were called. Rhythm and Hues. I think they went out of business. But anyways, like if you go look at the VFX industry or the Paramounts or the Warner Brothers, I doubt they're going to buy it. I don't know. It just seems maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah. We'll see. I want to keep moving on here because I actually got to get out the door. We have our last thing. Why don't they just make it so the Mac Pro isn't stupid expensive?
Why don't they make it cheaper?
This week's Why Don't They Just is kind of for both of us, I feel like. Actually, I like this. This is from Zach at Sleeve180 on Twitter. Asks, why don't they
Sounds familiar. Hi, Zach.
Do you know Zach?
No, I feel like I've seen that name before.
Oh.
The Sleeve 180. Didn't we do that before?
Maybe. Why don't they just have the minimalist interior for S and X as another interior option and letting people choose what they like? I'll start this one with what I assume, and then you can give me the more official answer. But I'm assuming it's just manufacturing line simplification. It just does not make any financial sense to run 2 different options of an interior. Like, you want to simplify it. And
yeah, 100%. But I think that's the answer in Tesla's current setup. Because if you look at a bigger, let's just zoom out a little bit. Tesla is still, in terms of the number of cars they're making, a fledgling tiny automaker.
Right.
Like, they really don't even approach the Toyotas or Volkswagens of the world. Now but they're selling out like crazy. So they definitely have an outsized impact on our society and on the world than how many cars they actually make. So with their one general assembly facility, that there's just no way that they would do that. However, if they were, triple their size, and they had, like let's say 5 general assembly facilities, something like that, I could totally see them having this as an option, right? And then your car, you don't know which factory it's coming out of because this one's maybe optimized for this one's optimized for this. Like if you look at other factories like a GM or a Ford or some of these guys, a lot of times you see just completely different vehicles coming off the line, right? A lot of times it's similar chassis, like it'll be trucks and SUVs coming on one and then cars of all kinds coming on the other, but it's not like all F-150s are coming out.
Right.
It's like,
the F-150
all
door,
like similar size kind of thing. So yeah, so it's a thing. Like I could see that being a possibility. Right now, absolutely 100% does not make sense for them from a financial standpoint. Now, the cool thing would be if they upgrade all the battery tech, give you 400 miles of range, added performance, blah blah blah, and like have that as like, okay, you can do that now because that's just all internal components that are generally similar to what we already have. Or you can pre-order the new interior option as well for down the road.
Right.
That would be an interesting thing. I would probably buy it now if I had that option versus waiting.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Why don't they just? Reminder, guys, if you have a good question, hit us up on Twitter. I don't think we can keep up with the comments on YouTube, but it's easy to look back on Twitter, just do a hashtag, why don't they just, and we can look for our favorite why don't they just. And
or maybe Tim could set up a subreddit one day.
Maybe. Why do I have to do that? I
don't
know how to do subreddits.
Yeah. Why doesn't Tim do that? Yeah, somebody pinged me. I'm like, I don't do Reddit. That's for you young kids. I don't know.
No, it's not. Anyway, you're working on like 3 videos. I'm working on a video before I go to Texas. Give us a 1-minute synopsis on.
So I'm about to post the video about selling the Tesla. That's about to go on sale. So have your credit card standing by. Call 1-800. No. So there's that, and then I'm doing a video about autopilot safety. That's almost done. I need to go film a little bit more, and then I rented an airplane hangar to have all because I've have the S, the 3, and the X, and so I lined them all up, talked about all the features, all that kind of stuff. So I've got all 3 of those coming out pretty soon. So
That's
and
awesome.
then the earnings call is coming up here in a few weeks. So
sweet. You're gonna be busy.
Lots of stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to squeeze out one on why rockets roll when they're a cylindrical body. Like, why don't they just go in a direction, right? Why do they need to roll?
Versus like that.
And, well, they do a thing where they, off the pad, they roll, and then they just pitch in one direction instead of, like, just tilting. It's a whole thing. It's a quick last-minute one that I think will be pretty easy for me to try to get out before I leave for who knows how long, because every time I look at the calendar, something changes, and I'm a mess. So, welcome to my life. Yeah.
I imagine that the answer is probably, it does matter, right? Like, like I think about a golf ball. I went and played golf with my dad yesterday, and it was one of those things like the spin on the ball makes a massive difference on the trajectory and what happens. But when you look at a golf ball, it's very kind of smooth. You wouldn't really think it makes that big of a difference, but it does.
Aerodynamically, it has almost nothing to do with it. On most rockets, yep.
Interesting.
It's a guidance and navigation
my first
system.
thought was like there's just because it's not 100% perfectly smooth, right? There's little bumps and stuff. I thought like maybe that little bit would give it an extra boost or something. I don't know.
On some vehicles, it does exactly that, but we'll get to it.
Unless they have those big Tintin fins or something.
Exactly. All right, well, guys, that'll do it for our Ludacris future.
We'll see you in our
Ludacris future.
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 Wow.